Okay, great. Welcome, everyone. It's great to be here with such esteemed guests. And I'll be starting with Dr. Basil. Dr. Basil is not only representing Rydia, but Dr. Basil is a very well-renowned entrepreneur in the water ecosystem and the sustainability ecosystem in Saudi. And it's very important to understand what Rydia's role is today on the missions. What are the missions that Rydia is focusing on? And if you can give us maybe a deeper perspective on the sustainability mission. That's why we're here, and what Rydia's role is going to be to make sure that this is going to be happening.
Okay, thank you very much, and it's about good morning, everyone. So yesterday we saw the launch of two sustainability missions. One is to increase food self-sufficiency from 20% to 50%. And the second mission is water-related, and that is to reduce withdrawal of non-renewable water by 90% and reduce the cost of desalination or producing water by 50%. These are very bold missions and very challenging, and they are very unique to us in Saudi Arabia. So as some of the speakers this morning said, greatest challenges produce the greatest opportunities. And this is the way we look at it at Rydia. So we launched the missions. Before we did that, we worked with MIWA to develop technology roadmaps for those missions. What are the key technologies that we can focus on and try to develop so that we can achieve these specific milestones? So these are specific, time-bound, and we know that they are associated with numbers, so clear accounting for those missions. So we did this elaborate exercise, and we identified the most promising technologies that have the potential to achieve our targets, reduce the cost, reduce the energy consumption. And then we identified who in Saudi Arabia has the capability to work on developing these technologies. And our job is to fill in the gaps. So we plan to work with universities, with the private sector, with local and international players, and with industries. And while we do this, we try to identify the gaps in the system and the clogs in the system and try to fix them during the process. So universities will work on early stage innovations. Startups will work in middle stage, pushing the TRL from 2 all the way to 3, 4, 5, and then handing over those technologies to industries that can scale them up and commercialize them. Of course, innovation or mission-based innovation strategy is an economic strategy. So economics are at the heart of this. All of our missions are aligned with Vision 2030. And all the missions require extensive collaboration between Rydia, between the custodian, which is the ministry, academia, and the private sector. And we, as Rydia, we are the coordinator of this collaboration. Okay. Now, in terms of milestones for these two specific missions, Rydia is planning to invest around 1 billion riyals to create 10 startups, 10 mature startups at advanced TRL level. Hopefully those startups will commercialize technologies and export them to the world. And we hope that these startups will create a GDP impact of around $34 billion or 34 billion riyals, and create jobs, around 13,000 high-quality jobs in the ecosystem. So this is what we plan to do over the next 10 or 15 years, depending on the timeline of each mission.
Okay, sounds great. And that maybe takes us to a very important partner in the ecosystem, Dr. Abdelaziz Al-Malik. He's a Deputy of Research and Innovation at MIWA. And MIWA is a partner of Rydia to make sure that this happens, and particularly focusing on the how. So a lot of policies and directions are set by Rydia, but then MIWA works on getting the how done. So Dr. Abdelaziz, if you can be kind enough to tell us how you're going to be able to do this, and what role you're going to play to complement the role of Rydia in that ecosystem?
Thank you, Rabia, for the question. I'm really and deeply grateful for the opportunity to be among such an esteemed group of panelists. I would like to, before I begin, I would like to give some context to what has been done so far with Rydia and what is happening in the national innovation system in Saudi Arabia. So let us all agree that innovation and research is a very difficult, innovation sector is a very difficult game, okay? But if you win, you will not only accomplish your mission, i.e. address your challenge, it will trickle down positive effects to almost all macroeconomics indicators, right? And I talked yesterday about the national framework where the kingdom has set to govern and manage the system. Okay, it defines the roles, the responsibilities of all parties involved. It also sets or even the interplay between that should happen between Rydia and MIWA. It's very clear now. All relevant parties know what they should do to propel the system. So together with MIWA, we worked on answering two basic questions regarding this difficult game. First, the question is where do you want to play? Okay, i.e., where do we want to, where are we willing to put our bets? Okay, in this huge technology landscape. Okay, what are the research areas, the focus areas that are most relevant to our grand challenge, and also those who are achievable somehow. Okay, don't have to also over promise, and then we should focus on it, build momentum, and then move to the next. So and while doing that, setting up the strategic focus, we did not forget also to put in place the tools that will make sure that we stay in the right course of actions. Okay, i.e., I talked about yesterday the technology intelligence, or we called it innovation monitor now, and also the mission coordination office. All these structures are meant to keep us on track and strategically focused. The second question was, okay, now we know where we want to play, then how are we going to win? Again, what interventions, measures, policy instruments that the government can introduce to propel the system and make it maybe more productive? And I talked yesterday about a few of them. When we did scan the system, when we were developing our strategy, we found a lot of good activities here and there, but they have something in common. They were mostly, of course, there were exceptions to the norm, but mostly they were redundant, isolated, and small scale. So there is no impact envisaged out of them. So we decided to do something about really enhancing the linkages within the system. We don't leave the system as is. And before we developed the strategy, we thought maybe we need to do more funding, this regular and traditional thinking, more funding, maybe more regulatory freedom. But we found out that maybe just making the parties talking to each other, okay, the government, the private sector, the R&D centers, the NGO, and what have you, the regulators, maybe we can achieve more with less. And that's why we established, again, I talked yesterday, don't want to be boring and redundant, but we established the Saudi Agri-Food Tech Alliance a few months back. Yesterday, we also announced the Water Alliance. We are working now actively with Rydia to establish 2 tech valleys, one in the western region, we call it Water Innovation Strip. We'll concentrate on water because, you know, sometimes you need to have critical mass of talent and infrastructure and just the right business environment in one place, geographically bound, especially in developing countries, so you can develop a mini ecosystem of innovation, and then maybe it can grow and diffuse to the bigger economy. The second intervention is to unlocking demand. Basically creating demand for technology. So the demand was always there, but the economics of the demand was missing, okay? So again, as a developing country, government should play a role even in innovation delivery, not only in just supporting the system, okay? So we decided to establish a big program, the Q1 this year, we call the Innovation Deployment Program, where we will subsidize the investment in innovation deployment, of course, to serve the grand challenge of either food security or water security, okay? And sometimes the demand is there, the supply is there, but they don't meet, okay? The demand is less responsive to the supply because of several host of issues. Maybe it's an outdated regulatory framework, or it is even the understanding of some bureaucrats to the implementation, okay, and enforcement of certain laws in the kingdom. So we decided to create the sandbox program where we say, you know, we assure the regulators that they are still safeguarding the consumers, the environment, but we need to give some room to innovators and out-of-box thinkers to also try with their what they claim to be revolutionary solutions. And last, although we adopted a demand-side innovation policy, okay? I'm talking about MIWA here. Of course, Rydia is focusing also on the supply side. But we found also gaps in the supply. So we cannot create demand if no supply in the kingdom. And even if you want to bring the technology from abroad, you don't have the right foundation, okay, to be able to welcome this, or to be able to maximize the exposure of foreign technology and absorb it, okay, and then diffuse it within the local economy. You need to have the absorptive capacity to do that. Mm-hmm. And we decided we will work also with Rydia and other parties within the government to in talent development, in entrepreneurship development, also in establishing some of the infrastructure that is needed for innovation delivery. Also, we went to the extent we are discussing now with the center of government to establish institutions, okay, to make sure to bridge the gap between academia and industry. That's how far we went, and this is the whole of government approach. That is, it's becoming the norm now in the new Saudi Arabia with the Vision 2030 and the modus operandi that is happening now.
Excellent. Thank you, Doctor. I think that's very thorough and very detailed. And I would like as well to remind the audience that yesterday Dr. Abdelaziz announced the pledges. So there has been a pledge of 4 billion riyal between the public sector and private sector to invest in R&D, which is a very big number. So let me summarize quickly Dr. Basil's and Dr. Abdelaziz's inputs. So Dr. Basil and Dr. Abdelaziz, they talked about the what. So we know where we want to go to. It has been identified exactly where this is going to go. Dr. Abdelaziz explained the vehicle that's going to take us there. So the machine that has all the components that are very well crafted and designed is there. And the fuel, which is the 4 billion Saudi riyal to actually get us there, is as well in place. Now, it sounds very straightforward and simple to be done. However, I would like to go to Professor Mariana and get a more down-to-earth perspective of what's not simple about getting there, what reality has told us, particularly that Dr. Mariana has looked back a lot on governments that she did advise them to understand what worked well and what didn't work well. So Professor Mariana, please let us know.
Sure. So it's a real honor to be here because so many people talk, not many walk the talk. And I think what's happening in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is you're really trying your hardest to really not only walk the talk, but to bring it to the center. As long as it's peripheral, far away in a department of the environment or in a group that deals with water, then we just get a lot of nice little projects, but it doesn't transform. And we can't actually have mission accomplished in terms of Vision 2030 if it's just, lots of projects where the sum is not greater than the parts. And I think that what the missions approach that I've now been writing about for over 10 years brings is precisely that glue, but also the ambition. But I really want to highlight something that was just said by Dr. Abdulaziz, which is that growth is an outcome. In the UK, by the way, where the new government also adopted the missions, I told them they made a big mistake. The first mission they have is growth. Growth is the outcome if this mission-oriented approach works. Why? What is growth? It's a result of investment. And in countries around the world where there's low public sector investment, low private sector investment, it's not surprising that we have low productivity and low growth. And of course, everyone wants growth, but you don't get growth by talking about it. You don't get a higher research and development spend by just having a target. Every country I know has a target for increasing research and development spending. But why do we need research and development spending? Why do we need investment if we have goals? Otherwise, we can just, sit on our chairs and be happy. And by the way, there's big incumbency effects as well. Some people would prefer to have the inertia. They're benefiting from the inertia. So we shouldn't forget there's also a question of negotiating, and there's a bit of a battle of ideas. But coming back to the growth point, growth also has not just a rate, which is a function of investment, but a direction. And we should remember that some countries that have had a high rate of growth, it was the wrong direction. It was precisely the direction that then these different COP meetings, COP16, but also, the climate ones, the biodiversity ones, the land and water ones, they're discussing how do we change the direction of growth, not just the rate. We want it to be innovation-driven. We want it to lead to more equity and inclusion. We want it to lead to more sustainability across the whole economy. And that's where missions can help us, because they help us to direct growth and to start with the big challenges. And the water challenges you have here have been turned into missions to increase the self-sufficiency of food, to increase the non-renewable supply of water, and of course, in the process, to reduce the cost precisely by the innovation. But by thinking about it as missions that go to the center, not on the periphery, that require all sectors to innovate, but especially for government to work differently, this is one of the, I wouldn't call it a barrier, but one of the challenges. We know from across the world that you have the ministries that often are very happy with themselves. Sometimes you have a minister who might have different projects, and their own reputation is on the line if that project goes badly. And that's not good, because if the project isn't going well, you should want it to stop. You want to pivot, you want to be agile and flexible. So I believe, and I hope this is not controversial, but that missions should really be at the center, which means we shouldn't allow them to be captured by any particular ministry. If we have the water-related missions, because water is everything, right? Water goes across all the sustainable development goals, all the sectors, but also all our different kind of ministerial activities, then it should be at the top, above the ministries. This is what I suggested to Europe, by the way. Based on my work, they set these 5 different missions, but they got stuck in the equivalent of a ministry, the DG for Innovation, RTD, in the Horizon program. I said, what are you doing? That's only 30 billion for the missions across Europe. That's nothing. Put it at the cabinet level, where the commissioner, von der Leyen, sits. Europe had a Green Deal. That's where the missions should have sat in order to foster a real Green Deal across all of Europe, across the member states, but especially in that cross-sectoral, cross-ministerial way. So that would be my also first advice. Be careful that if we talk about center of government, let's take it seriously, as I think you do, by the way, much more than many other countries, but that means bring it to the center so that each of the different ministries need to change how they are operating, from the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Environment, of course MIWA, but also finance. What I've learned in Brazil, which is very interesting recently, with the most recent Lula government, they put the ecological transition very much in Lula's kind of presidency, but that meant that the finance ministry needed to change. So how BNDES, one of the largest public banks in the world, is fostering the ecological transition needed to change because the command, if you want, came from the presidency's level that told all the different ministries, including health, that they needed to change how they were operating if we were going to take that seriously. And in terms of the point with the private sector, for the kingdom, I think one of your challenges is there hasn't been enough development of private industry. And so this is a great opportunity to get it right, because we know, as I mentioned yesterday, that there's some problematic public-private partnerships when it's a race to the bottom, when the government just gets requests from business, whether it's on particular things they want an intellectual property right, or in some countries it's about tax, or problematic ways in which innovation collaborations are set. So I think the more these missions are bold and inspirational, but bring also confidence, it should also result in a better definition of what a good partnership looks like, so it truly is a race to the top. And I often look at the COVID period, as I mentioned yesterday, as an example of good and bad collaborations. I won't talk about the bad ones, but a good one was the AstraZeneca Oxford University, which Oxford is a public university, deal where they negotiated to make sure they would share the knowledge with others, because this was during a COVID pandemic. So technology transfer, patent pool issues, keeping prices and costs low was critical for the vaccine to actually be produced, for example, in Africa. But that was part of the deal. So I think instead of just talking about public-private partnerships, we really need to start sandboxing what a good partnership looks like. And lastly, the point of demand. You should really be congratulated, I think, by focusing so much on demand. That's the only way we scale. You create a market through demand-side tools. The US has a history of this. They pretend they're the free market, but they're one of the most active, visible hands. And it was through procurement strategy that allowed the startups to scale up. And so what you want to do, of course, is to attract capital, but you need to also help create markets for the startups that you attract so they can grow and they also then want to stay here. And I think all these different tools, the innovation agencies, the loan programs, the guarantees, but especially these demand-side instruments need to be looked at together as a portfolio of tools which will help you transform.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, Professor. That's very, very insightful and complements what we heard from the gentleman. Dr. Bassel, Professor Mariana spoke about the center of government and spoke about the role that can be played to synergize all of these. Rydia is in a very particular position where you're coordinating not only the sustainability mission, but many other missions. So, and as well, you have a role to play with other stakeholders. So if you can tell us more about the role of Rydia being the orchestrator across these different industries, and how are you finding synergies between the different missions that are happening right now?
Good question. The good news is that the RDIA strategy and missions and targets are at the center of government. We have a Supreme Committee, and all ministers are present in the Supreme Committee, all ministers, and the chairman of the Supreme Committee is the top authority in the country. So it is already at the top level, and this gives us a lot of hope and confidence that whatever we're doing is getting the highest support from the government. Now, Rydia looks at itself as an enabler of the ecosystem. Okay, so we enable, we link together the entire value chain of innovation. We remove the clogs from the process of innovation. We strengthen the weak parts in the value chain. We enhance the human capital. We attract the international human capital that is capable of innovating. So we are definitely enablers. We connect the ministries, the end users, to the end universities, to the innovators, and also to the startups. And we try to provide a balance of support between the entire value chain. Now, the demand side. I personally, and this is also in the heart of the RDIA strategy, that the demand is the biggest driver of innovation, and it's extremely important. So Radia is creating partnerships currently with the private sector. So we go and meet with the main players in the private sector. We create partnerships with them. We look at their problems. We integrate them within our strategy. We create programs for innovating to solve their solutions. And it's amazing how what we don't know about the private sector and the problems that they face and how much they're innovating. I mean, this morning we heard about a company that's working to grow fodders and cereals using very little water. Nobody does this around the world. Nobody cares about growing animal feed and cereals in protected environments because it's not a problem for other people. But achieving the targets of 50% self-sufficiency seems to be attainable because the private sector is already engaged and interested and allocating resources. And so, of course, we have a lot of initiatives, a lot of programs, a lot of sandboxes, regulatory sandboxes. We have open lab policy to allow everybody to access the labs in the universities. We have so many programs. We are trying to leverage on the strength of Saudi Arabia, the uniqueness of Saudi Arabia, the uniqueness of the large companies that we have, the Aramco, the SABIC, and their interest in research and development, our unique position in the globe, and the importance of carbon circularity for us as a country and for our economy, the unique water challenges that we face and to solving them, and the importance of those solutions to the rest of the world, which will create an economic impact at some point. Yeah. So we definitely are enablers, and we try to bring all the ecosystem players together.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Bassel. Dr. Abdelaziz, having worked very closely with you, I know that you're a doer. So it's not about the theory and the frameworks that you've previously mentioned, but it's about doing stuff on the ground and moving the needle. So maybe if you can tell us a couple of examples, maybe one or two practical examples that shows how you're already achieving. You're not only planning, but you're achieving. And a follow-up question on that, if you allow me. We have a lot of people here in the room that are from an international background that can be part of this journey. So what's your message to them?
Sure. Well, there are many examples of successful endeavors. But there is one particular example that I like very much because it ticks all the boxes, okay? But again, giving some context, so policymakers in sustainability, especially in our region, they always find themselves in this critical and difficult position where they still need to make policies to ensure self-sufficiency of food production, to meet up to catch up with the demand, with the demanding economy and growing population, okay? And at the same time, use the scarce water resources very responsibly and sustainably in a very water-stressed region. And doing all of the above while keeping also the environment safe and preserving the biodiversity and what have you. So this is very difficult position to be in. And Saudi Arabia made significant strides in, for example, in food self-sufficiency, right? But this is at the highest level. If you actually see the value chain, you will see the self-sufficiency level varies. So you will find that in the downstream we have more self-sufficiency in food value chain in the kingdom than the upstream levels. Okay, so the government a few years back decided to disrupt this status quo, and that's where we need really to have a safe self-sufficiency level that can actually make sure that we don't be part of. It's gained momentum after COVID. Okay, so any disruption of the supply chain, we are still in the safe hands. So a few years back, we localized algae production technology, right? So we had to find, again, with the upstream component, I'm talking about now the poultry, for example, industry, which is a very significant component of our food security strategy. We are importing most of the feedstock, okay? It's soya beans and corn and what have you, because of